Good Shabbos, everyone, and welcome to Temple Ohev Sholem for our experiment in live streaming a Shabbat service. I'm sure you will enjoy it. I'm joined by the Temple Board, who is here socially distanced, and we're going to bring Shabbat to your homes, and we hope that you are preparing for a wonderful Sabbath. We like to begin by lighting our Shabbat candles. If you have a prayer book, I invite you to please turn to page 121. Before we start, let's take a cleansing breath. I think we need a cleansing breath. It's been a long, hard year, and it's our first time back in the congregation, so let's take a deep breath. Great. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Let's turn now to page 123 and continue with Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom tehila lemikrae kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim Kivanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh, HaShabbat. Amen. Page 127. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of wonder, day of peace. Let's continue now with Lecha Dodi on page 138. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi Lecha Dodi likrat kahala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Sh'hamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet ve'litilah. Lecha dodi likrat kahala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kahala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam besimcha u'bzola, Toch emuneh am segula, Boi kala, Lecha dodi likrat kahala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kahala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Let's rise, please, and turn to page 146 for Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, B'chochma poteach she'arim, Uvitfuna meshane itim, Umachalif et hazmanim, Umisader et hakochavim, B'mishmarotehem barakia kirtzono, Borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech, V'choshech mipnei or, Uma'avir yom umevi layla, Umavdil ben yom uvein layla, Adonai tzevaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Let's continue together at the top of page 151. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. The Shema is on page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. Let's continue together with Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meyodecha Ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam ve'shiftecha bevetecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha Ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot beinenecha, uktavtam al mezuzot betecha uvisharecha, leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Page 157. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, Give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Yam bam 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 bibi bam ya ba 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 bim bam yam bam 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 bibi bam ya ba 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 bim bam ay 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 ya ba 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 bim bam ay 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 ya ba 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 bim bam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha ne'edar b'kodesh norat hilot osefel norat hilot osefel yam bam 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 bibi bam ya ba 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 bim bam yam bam 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 bibi bam ya ba 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 bim bam ay 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 ya ba 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 bim bam ay 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 ya ba 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 bim bam. Page 161. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch ata Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Vishamru is on page 162. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Please rise for tefillah, page 164. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips Ata Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Koneh HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot U'Mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Ata Adonai Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Page 171. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God, Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. Let's continue together at the top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 175. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch Atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yir'ah na'avod. We continue now with Shalom Rav on page 178. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol ed uvechol sha'a bishlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. chasim leolam. Let's pause now for a moment of silent reflection. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'emru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh 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 shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom. I've been waiting to give this sermon for a very long time. I've written it 4, maybe 5 times in the past week, and I've thought about it for several months now, maybe even a year or more. I never thought I would give a sermon quite like the one you're about to hear, but here we are, back in our sanctuary, live, but not really live at all. It's been a long time since we had a normal service in this, our most sacred of sacred spaces. And yet this service is far from normal and far from what many people are calling the new normal. For in reality, there is no normal anymore. There isn't even a new normal. That's a misnomer, to be sure. I'm not sure how our temple board feels about being here in the sanctuary, wearing masks and being socially distanced. How I hate that term. How can one be social and distant at the same time? But here we are in our sanctuary, or as Milton Berle would say, you out there in television land, trying to establish a connection to God and each other when we sit separated, wearing masks, after we signed in to enter our building, and after we used hand sanitizer just to make sure, and sit spaced out in what we hope will be called community. It's all too bizarre to even speak about. Community, when we have spent over a year in our own little bubbles, and some of us are still in those little bubbles trying to survive a pandemic. It's almost too strange to mention. So where do we go from here? That's the question on everyone's mind this Shabbat. The first one when we open our doors to a small part of our membership. Not where do we go from here in terms of our congregation. That's a question for the temple board to flesh out, but how do we begin to go on with our lives now that we know that a virus can come out of nowhere and kill so many people, and could easily happen again in another form or another permutation with the same or even a worse outcome? I don't know how you feel this Shabbat, but I feel as though I have just come back from a war where the casualties are members of our congregation, members of our families, the woman who lived across the street, the man who came to services every Friday night, whom we will never see again. The pandemic killed people no matter their race, color, socioeconomic strata. The pandemic killed men, women, rich people, poor people, marginalized people, and people who truly thought they were invincible. And now here I stand, and here you sit looking up at me or looking at each other and asking, what's next? God, I wish I knew. I wish I could give you all a sense of hope and say, don't worry, the pandemic is over. There's a vaccine, and we will all be vaccinated sooner rather than later, and that COVID-19 will be just a memory, a bad dream that some of us woke up from, and others, well, others who were never awakened at all. So for those of us who are here at Ohev Sholem and those who are at home watching this live streamed or watching this tomorrow or the next day or the next, all of us are part of a new world that is not normal at all. Even if we could go back to the way things were in November of 2019 before we ever heard of this disease, even if we could pretend that it never happened, this past year or so has affected all of us in the most profound way. We have redefined the term PTSD in 2021. We are all the walking wounded, whether we realize it or not. No one knows this better than I, because the war called AIDS, which began in 1981, is still around in one form or another, and there still is no vaccine for that pandemic. And there's still no cure for cancer. You can tell that to the family of the 35-year-old woman whom I buried a few weeks ago, or the family of the gifted eye surgeon who literally starved to death in a bed at the hospice residence because euthanasia is against the law. There is also no cure for mental illness, the war that people like me who struggle from depression, that war never really ends either, unless we end it for ourselves. There are many diseases, many wars that we fight individually or collectively that truly never end. I know what it means to bury the dead, to bury your friends, to fight a plague. I've been doing it for most of my life, and I'm sure I'll be doing it until the day I die. It's just what I do. Name babies, do a bar or a bat mitzvah, officiate at a wedding, and bury the dead. Sure, life changes and we can call it a new normal, but what is normal anyway? So where is my message of hope as we begin to emerge from our hibernation? Don't worry, here it is. Don't negate your feelings as you emerge from the darkness into the light. And don't be blinded because the light is very bright, especially since we've been living in the dark since March of 2020. Take things slowly. Take it easy. Give yourself time to adjust to the light as the darkness recedes. And remember that you will never be the same as you were before COVID-19, and none of us will. And that's okay. It's okay to never be the same. It's okay to be fearful that another pandemic can happen at any time. It's okay to be cautious, and it's okay to feel any way that you need to feel. We all fought this war differently, and even though it seems to be coming to an end, we are still the walking wounded. So take care, my friends. Wear your mask, get vaccinated, be careful, and be wise. Because a wise person knows that nothing ever stays the same. And even though we survived in one way or another, none of us will ever be the same. Shabbat Shalom. Now let's take a moment to pray for those who are sick and in need of healing. There are still people who are suffering from this pandemic. There are still people who are dying of cancer. There are people who have heart disease. There are people who have brain cancer. There are people who struggle with depression. There are many people who are the walking wounded, whether we can see them or not. Tonight, I think we should say the Mishaberach prayer for all of us, because all of us need healing in one way or another. Whether we need healing because we lost someone we love, whether we need healing because we had COVID-19 and survived and it's left us with scars. We all need healing because we are beginning to emerge into the light from something that was very dark, and many of us have scars that will take time, a long time, to heal. So tonight the Mishaberach prayer is for all of us who are here together in the sanctuary, all of us who are watching live streamed, and everyone we love. Let's sing the Mishaberach prayer together. Mishaberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We say together, Baruch atah Adonai rofeh hacholim. We praise you, Adonai, our God, who heals the sick, and we all say, Amen. At this time, we rise now for Aleinu on page 586. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא Yeh Adonai echad, Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo echad. Page 594. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love what death has touched. On this Shabbat, I've decided not to read the names of those whose yahrzeits are being observed. I'd like us all to take a moment of silence to think of all the people that you have loved and lost over the past year, and to think of all the people in our congregation that we have loved and lost. Let's take a moment to remember them. The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalmad yivrach cheruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedech al Beit Yisrael, b'galov izman kariv v'yimaru amen, yehesh shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei kudsho b'richu, v'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yalma v'yimaru amen, yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen, oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all of us who mourn, and comfort to all who are bereaved, and we say, Amen. I wouldn't be much of a rabbi if I didn't remind us that Shabbat is a time of joy. This service has not been the most joyful of services that we've had together, but we're going to get ready as the sun begins to set to have our day of rest, our day of renewal, our day for ourselves to be with our families and the people we love. Day when we can begin to heal from what we've been through, because we have been through a war and we are the walking wounded. But at this moment, we're going to stop thinking about that, and we're going to think about joy. And we're going to think about the joy of Shabbat. And we're going to think about how wonderful it is that we have a community at Temple Ohev Sholem. And we're going to think about the wonderful temple board that is here with us this evening. And our amazing president, Rob Teplitz, who has done more for this congregation. No offense to any president who is sitting here today. He has really come through in the most difficult of times. And I thank you, Rob. And I thank everybody from our congregation who has not abandoned us, who has continued to pay your temple dues even though you haven't been in the building, and who knew that a day would come when we will all be together again to observe a Shabbat that is filled with joy. So let's join with Chris in Adon Olam on page 625. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivrach leit nasa v'chefza chol אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא אדון עולם, והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא וחפץ החול, אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, ביעדו הפקיד רוחי בעת ישן ואירה אדון עולם, ואם רוחי גבייתי אדון עולי ולא אירה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא וחפץ החול, אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם. Now, O God, we ask your blessings on those who are here in person and all of those who are here virtually. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our mothers and our fathers, grant us a Shabbat filled with joy and rest, and a week ahead filled with good health and with peace. We say, Shabbat Shalom.